Welcome to another episode of Feeding the Wolf a Possibilities podcast. Today, we're diving into the intriguing and mysterious world of holotropic and psychedelic therapies. This episode was recorded quite a few months ago, and I've been a bit hesitant to release it due to the very many and very strong opinions and conclusions surrounding this topic. But the target of this podcast is to explore possibilities. And that's precisely what our guest, Pio Emgård, addresses in this conversation, venturing way beyond the confines of conventional thinking. Pio is a psychedelic therapist in training, and as you'll discover, his own experiences have led to big changes for him, including the ability to remember his dreams for the very first time. It's important to note that this type of therapy is not legal in many countries, and this podcast does not advocate for breaking the law in any way. That said, sit back and join us as we explore the potential of the future through the lens of psychedelic experiences. And remember, you know what parts are true for you. You always do. Welcome, Pio. I'm so happy to have you on. And let's start at the very beginning. What is this? What is holotropic and psychedelic therapies?
Well, you can look at it in many different ways, but I like to think of it as basically just a way, a shortcut to access to the real smart parts of the brain that are not connected with our smart thinking, but the real parts of the brain that actually have the knowledge.
So you are currently in a 3-year training to become a holotropic and psychedelic therapist. So how did you end up there? What made you dive into this whole area?
I've been realizing that I had some kind of trauma maybe 10 years ago or so. And that was mainly because I went to this training when they told us to envision things, to see things with our eyes closed. And I was laughing because I've heard of that, of course, and they said that all the time. But when we were actually supposed to do it, I was like, but that doesn't work. It's dark. I can't see anything. My eyes are closed, so I can't see anything. And then I realized that everybody else in the room was able to see stuff with their eyes closed. And so coming home, I started messaging people on Messenger and asking them, can you see things when your eyes are closed? And everybody was, and I wasn't. So then I realized something is probably different within me. And why is that? And is that something that's fixable? Or is it just, do I have a brain damage, basically?
Well, I know it's called something called aphantasia.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, you didn't know that. Is that correct?
No, I didn't know it. And it took a couple of years before I realized that it's a thing. And so that was actually the other time when I started messaging my friends and telling them, this is what I have.
So can you talk about what that is? Like, how would you describe it when you have aphantasia?
It's a bit different from person to person, but for me, it was sometimes I do this with people that don't understand it, that I ask them to close their eyes and I ask them to just see a pink elephant and see if they can look at it, watch it dancing on a small tiny rope and managing to stand up and see if it's grass under the elephant and if the grass can turn blue. And if you would paint the elephant with these letters on the side saying Stockholm, and if you could read that Stockholm from starting with the M and reading backwards. So depending on how much of that's possible to see, you can no, if it's just black, then that's aphantasia for sure. And for some people, it's no problem. They can read signs backwards. And for most people, they can see that it's an elephant, but it's maybe black and white and maybe a little bit of pink. So it's very different from how different people work. Then I started trying to find ways to get to know if this is something that is curable or not.
And what did you find?
Well, I searched and tried and different kinds of methods and going to trauma healing in different kinds of, I've been to a lot of therapy and a lot of different things, and it really haven't impacted anything. But I've had two occasions during that 10 years when I realized that my brain is actually able to make things look, to envision things for myself. And they've been in a different kind of settings, but when my nervous systems have been very soft or very activated. And so from those two experiences, I just realized that it is possible for my brain to make up in images. So it is possible to fix, and I don't have a brain damage, at least not in that part of my brain. And so in this search for trying to fix it, because that's probably what I thought, I've tried all kind of things. And when I first heard about psychedelic therapy, I was like, yeah, this might be it.
So what happened when you had your first session?
Actually, first of all, I was very, very scared of doing that, because I've never smoked weed. I've had alcohol. I've tried to smoke, but I've never done anything else at all.
So you didn't have any drug experience?
No, none at all. And I've always been kind of scared to go into those things. I have this idea that I'm very easily get addicted. So to go into drugs didn't seem to be a good thing to try out. So I was very scared and wondering what will happen. I don't know what will happen at all. But it was this great sense of energy flow through my body. And so it was mostly a bodily reaction. It felt like it was like a warm, gentle car wash inside of my body, starting from my knees and going all the way up my spine, through my head. And it went on for hours and was just so enjoyable and so soft. And yeah, so mostly physical, but also I had a little bit of images going around, but not that very strong. But then after that session, I realized the night after that I had a dream. And I maybe remembered 2 dreams in my whole life. I've never had a nightmare in my life. And so I've realized that this is probably connected in some way. If my brain can't make up images, it's probably more difficult to remember the dreams. And so that night I had a very vivid dream. And so I just thought that it's just still the drugs in my systems. But then the night after that, I had another dream. And then it just kept going. And after a while, I realized that when I close my eyes, I do have visions. It's very different from time to time when I use this, when I go into and try to envision things. Sometimes it's very pink, the elephant. Sometimes it's gray. Sometimes the colors are vivid. Sometimes they blend. But so now I do have this possibility, and I do dream.
Mm. Mm. So what does that change for you? What does that open up?
I think this was what I was hunting in a way. This was what I was looking for, seeking, what I really wanted for myself. I wanted to be able to see things, make up things in my mind. But actually, I mean, that's fun and all and good. And I don't know, maybe I use it for something, I don't know. But what really has happened for me is a lot of more connectedness to myself. So I can feel myself, I can forgive myself, I can also, I think for me it helps a little bit with the separation of the ego. What am I and what am I not? And so what is me and what do I do?
How does the session work? What actually occurs when you do a session with psychedelics? If you could just describe so that people get a sense of what occurs.
Of course, it's different from for different facilitators and so on. But if I facilitate a session, it's we can say it's different parts. And the first part is it usually starts before the session, and then we talk about, do you know what this is about? Do you know what could happen? What are your experiences from before? What are you looking for? What's your intention with doing this? And that so you have this meeting beforehand, and then when you come to the session, that part goes on. So first you have some formalities going through, what's the responsibility from me and from the other person and so on. And then after that, there is a ceremony which we do for the start of the session. And the ceremony is designed to help you to become present and to remove as much of the fear that always is there, going there, and to acknowledge what we are about to do. And so this ceremony is a little bit different from person to person. It depends on what they need, basically. And during this ceremony, we have a meditation. Often we have some way to come into your own body and to be present with yourself, actually. And then after that, you have the medicine. And here in Sweden, it's in most parts of the world, it's not possible for me to supply with that, of course, because it's not legal.
Yeah, very true. And just for this walkthrough, let's suppose you are somewhere where it is legal.
Yeah, so they have the medicine, and then after that, they will be free for about 15 minutes to be with themselves. And then after that, the medicine starts to work, and then there's headphones and eye blind that you use during the whole session.
To block the rest of the world out?
Yeah. So this is maybe one of the most important parts here. If you use the same drug and go out on the town, go out, or I don't know, go to dance party or whatever to do the drugs, the visionary system, which is connected here, because the visionary system is such a big part of our reality. So if you don't have the covered your eyes in any ways, then you will be so much out in the world. And so we need to block that off to be able for you to go into your own world instead.
So you basically block both hearing and sight.
Yeah.
And then do you also have, I'm guessing the room then also blocks a lot of the kind of like the touch, the physical touch sense, or?
Usually you either on a couch or in a bed. So you have this duvet on, and so to be able to have your own little nest to be by yourself.
So say you're in the Netherlands where a lot of more things are allowed. Just to use that as an example, what are the kind of drugs that would be used as medicine? Like because I think for a lot of people, they don't even know, what does that mean? Psychedelics, what does it mean? Medicine, whatever we call it. What is that? What is often used for this kind of therapy?
Yeah. So we usually speak about psychedelics, and in that it's psilocybin, which is in magic mushrooms, and also LSD, and there are some other compounds that could be used in this way. In the Netherlands, psilocybin is legal if you use the mushrooms that grow underground. They're called truffles, and so that is what is to be used in the Netherlands. So usually it's psilocybin.
So when I've been looking into this, there were a lot of studies done in the 60s and the 70s into psychedelics and the effect it could have on depression, for example. And it also seems to be coming back. And there are studies done today on psychedelics' effect on depression, suicidal thoughts, PTSD, and things like that. And one of the main effects it seems to have is to open people up to the sense of the largeness of the universe, a sense of oneness. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, also in connection to your own experience.
I think it's exactly like you describe it. And you can say it's mainly two things that the studies right now are focused on. It's either depression or PTSD, or complex PTSD. I'll go a little bit into that as well, but I also want to say that I believe that the main reason for that we use psilocybin and that we look at those two things is because it's maybe the easiest way to go. Because I think that when we, in 10 years or whatever, that we will have a lot of different, maybe a different view on ADHD or a lot of different things that we right now don't really know about. So,
like diagnoses.
But right now it's fairly easy to do these studies with these groups of people because it's easy to get the scientific results on paper. So maybe that's why they're looking into that. But I think for my part that these medicines have a lot of different uses as well, but we'll see in the future what that is. And so, for example, the reason of using psilocybin instead of LSD is that LSD takes so long time to go out of the body. So no therapist have the capacity to stay with the client for 12 or 24 hours or whatever it takes until it's out of the system. So for practical reasons, I think we've picked some of those substances and some of those areas where we do the studies.
Well, you also mentioned like looking into how to use this, for example, when you're close to death or like so how do you see that?
I think that if you are depressed, and at least when I've had depressions, my view of the world has been very small in a way. And it's been difficult for me to get out of my little world and see it from some other angle. And I think that's one of the possibilities here, that you can see this from a total other perspective. Your little problems, or what I feel is the whole world and what everything is about right now for me, with a little bit of distance and seeing it from another way, where you can see that, yeah, I might die in a couple of weeks. And of course, that's very sad. But it's also an end to that. There is something, not an end with an E, but an end with an A. So there is something more. And so when I get a glimpse of what's beyond where I'm right now, it's more easy to go into what's ever possible over there.
The sense of awe as a healing.
Yeah.
So when you worked with people, what have you seen? What have you experienced that they've gotten out of these sessions?
I think in this strange way that we get what we need most is what we get out of the sessions. So it's so strange, or maybe not so strange, because it's our own brain that wants to explore something, and what the brain gets a little bit of help with here is to shut down the amygdala, the parts of the brain that wants to keep us in control and that are fear-based, basically. So if you would remove your fear and think of your life or what you need or who you are or your relationship or what you're longing for or what happens when you die, and you would remove all the fear, that's pretty much what happens.
So what have you seen changes for people?
For some people, it's quite subtle changes. It could be like maybe they come into contact with anger. And so instead of letting other people stepping on them or taking advantage of them all the time, they all of a sudden have such a more easy time to keep their boundaries.
Say no.
Say no. And say yes. And for some people, where it's been hard to go into a relationship maybe or feel connection and to dive in, then the fear of that is a little bit gone, and so they can go deeper inside their relationship. For some persons, it's been she have had a lot of problems with her body in different ways and have so much pain and also different functions that haven't been good. She's been on a lot of medication, and after that her feeling is that the body is just has been tidying itself up in a way. So it's so much physical difference in her body. Her stance is different. The pain is gone in many ways. Everything feels so much more easy for her in her ordinary life. And so for me, it was this with being able to dream and to envision things. And so it seems like the question I usually ask is before going in is, what do you need to let go of today? It's so strange that the answer to that question is when we are talking maybe 6 hours afterwards. I said, it's so amazing. It's been all about this, what I needed to let go of.
What do you think is the main resistance to this kind of therapy, like in society?
I think it's that it's illegal. The psychedelic part is that it's illegal or difficult, but also, of course, people don't like to, or it's difficult to let go of their control system. Some of us acknowledge that it is, some of us don't, but still, I think that's what it's all about.
So if you looked at the world, well, let's look at Sweden since you live here, and if this therapy was more available, what do you see it contribute?
I think that it looks like in the where science says it is right now is that I think a lot of the
Depression,
medicine and a lot of that would probably be used having 1 or 2 or 3 sessions of this instead of having ongoing medication. And I think people generally would find out a little bit more of who they are and what they want. And if you remove the fear from people and remove the shame that people feel, then I think that's the biggest change to a person's life that you can have, I think.
Is it surprising to you that you work with this?
Well, in some ways, I started to become a teacher and never worked a day. And then I've been in the IT and security business for the rest of my life. But what I've always been wanting for myself is to find happiness and to live a full life. And this is what I happen to find. And then it's, of course, a bit tempting to let other people enjoy this as well. What's important to talk about in this, I feel, is also that what's really the wound behind all of this. And what I feel is that what we really need is connection and being in a community and being seen and being held by others and having friends and somebody to talk to when things don't go what we hope for and so on. And so I don't think this medicine will change that, of course. So what I'm wary about is that we just give this like another medicine instead of using SSRI preparates or whatever, that we use this one instead. But what we really need is to form some kind of connection between people. So maybe what's need to be fixed is not us, but maybe the society in a way. But maybe this can enable us to help ourselves to fix what's needed for us.
Even perceive the possibility.
Yeah.
So if somebody listening to this are interested in this, how could they find more information? Where would they find more information? And that really goes worldwide, since this is not a podcast just for Sweden. So where would you suggest they look?
My suggestion is to look at MAPS, their website, because there is a lot of links there, but also a lot of information, both about all the studies going on, but also harm reduction and a lot of other things that needs to be addressed here.
Thank you. Anything else you want to add?
No, just that I'm so grateful of having the possibility to talk to you in your lovely home here, and also that I feel hope for the future in this, and that this will, in a tiny way or bit by bit, create a better world.
And you're able to see the pink elephant now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast, Feeding the Wolf of Possibilities. I hope you have more space in your world now. If you would like to listen to earlier episodes, share with other people, or subscribe, please go to Spotify, iTunes, or visit KatarinaValentin.com/wolf.